that I'm writing the exam and I'm trying to finalize it, and one of the things that I have to keep in mind is they're telling me I have to keep parity between you guys and the online course. So, again, I was going to show this to you, but I can't get the computer running. But the handout sheet that I'm going to give you with exam number 1 is going to have all of the ratios. This is the ratio sheet that I gave you from exam number 3, for chapter 3. But then it's also going to have the chapter 2 equation of the free cash flow on there. And I posted this on Blackboard. So when you go on Blackboard under the learning module for exam number 1, where I posted the breakdown of the exam, I show you a sample of what I'm going to give you on Tuesday. So you guys can go there. So Blackboard, learning modules, exam number 1, breakdown of exam. And I even put a comment on there that I've added that file. So then you can see what it's going to look like. And for chapter 6, I gave you the quoted interest rate equation that was on that chapter 6 handout. And I gave you the expectations theory equations, both my version and the author's version. So those will all be on a handout that I will hand you for the exam. Okay? So you guys can see that. And then if we have, after we go over this written assignment today, if you guys have other questions for the exam, we can go over other questions that you might have. Hopefully we can get into the computer by then. Okay, let's kind of focus on the written assignment. Let me get the recorder going. So on the written assignment, on the handout sheet, like I explained on Tuesday, what you're going to see is you're going to be assigned a company based on your last name. So if your last name is A through L, you're going to be assigned Home Depot. It's the 2014 annual report. And when you get to the annual report, the date on that will be February 1, 2015. Because like I said, they don't have necessarily calendar year end. Then if your last name is N through Z, Lowe's company is going to be who you're assigned, 2014 annual report with their year end being January 30, 2015. Once again, I had told you guys, if you flip over to the back of the assignment sheet, I'm showing you guys how to use the website to go get the annual reports. These are the only numbers that I will accept. Don't try to go to Yahoo Finance or some other place to get numbers and use those and think that that's okay, because sometimes they recap things differently. So go get the annual report there, off of their website. Then what I'm saying is that this is the 30-point problem that's going to be due March 8th at the beginning of class. And so what you'll need to do is you'll need to take the company's annual report. So that's one of the reasons I kind of challenged you to go ahead and get those pulled off of the internet before we started talking about it, so you can kind of understand what's going on. And I'll try to draw some visual aids since I'm not able to get into the computer. But basically, if you look at how I set up chapter 3, problem 30, that's going to be similar to how I want you to set up this written assignment. So what you're going to do is you're going to use the company financials that you just pulled off of the internet, and you're going to calculate all of the ratios on this chapter 3 handout except number 5 and number 8. So don't calculate number 5 or number 8 on that chapter 3 handout. Cross those out. Otherwise you're calculating all of those. So step number 1, get the financial statements off of the internet, take your chapter 3 handout, and calculate all of those ratios using your company numbers. So, for example, you'll have a current ratio. You'll show me what your numerator is, dollar-wise. You'll show me what your denominator is, dollar-wise. And then you'll show me what the ratio is. So that's one column. Then you'll get an industry average, which I'm going to talk about here in a minute. And then you'll make your comment on whether it's a strength, a weakness, or neither for that company. Yeah, I can't get the mouse to work, and when I came in it was all sticky, and so I don't know what's going on. I changed the battery, but... Okay, Okay, so questions so far on what's going on? So you'll have the chapter 3 handout, and you'll do the ratios on chapter 3, except for 5 and 8, using the company numbers. Now, I made a comment there, okay, because I'm still in number 1 of the assignment sheet, kind of explaining you through it. What happens when you get to number 6, so you might want to make some notes to yourself. When you get to number 6, what's going to happen is your author used fixed assets. So your author was using the fixed assets, the plant, property, and equipment at cost. Well, what happens is, for the industry averages, they use the net fixed assets. So for number 6, you'll calculate it like the author. Then you'll calculate it like you'll need it for, we're going to use RMA, and I'm going to explain that here in a minute. So then you'll do the calculation as you'll need it to compare against the industry average. Okay, so you'll have to restate it. Then I'm saying the same is true once you get to the profitability ratios. So when you're looking at 11, 13, and 14, what's happening there is that your author uses net income for the numerator, but RMA uses earnings before tax as the numerator. It was here. I don't have any, I don't bring anything. Oh, okay. Okay, let's go to the column. Okay. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, okay. Thank you, because that's what was laying here, so that's what I was trying to, thank you. Any questions on that? So you'll have the restatements. So once again, you'll have the author's version, and then you'll have to do the restatement using earnings before tax. Again, this is all just calculating using the company numbers at this point. Questions or comments? Okay, for industry average, he rebooted the computer, so it's going to take me a little while before I can explain to you how to get to the industry averages and how to find the NAICS code. But so let's just look at this handout for a minute together, and I'll try to step you through it without having it where you guys can see me pointing to things. Okay, so what you have here is a sample of RMA. So I'm telling you in your step number, let's see, 2, that what you need to do is you need to get the industry averages, and you have to get them from RMA. And you'll have to go to the library to get them because they don't provide these electronically. And if you try to use them online, it'll probably cost you like $150. Okay, our library doesn't subscribe to that service. So what you'll do, and I'm going to show you how to get an NAICS code once the computer finally comes up, and it's still not up yet, is you'll go over to the library, and if you use the WSU library, other libraries have RMA. But if you use the WSU library, I have RMA in the reserve section of the library. So that's going to save you a lot of time just to go over here. And that's one of the reasons why I have today where you can spend some time on this. So what you need to do is you go to the reserve section and you ask for the RMA, and that's going to be under my name, and they are used to having tons of students needing it every semester. But once you get the book, you'll open up the book, and actually there's going to be ratios on both sides of the page. The copy that I'm giving you today is the right-hand side of the page. It's the right-hand side of the page. And this is a really old one. As you can tell, I pulled this a long time ago. It's telephone apparatus manufacturing. I on purpose gave you something that is not your industry. So don't use this as your industry averages. I've had people do that in the past. This is just a sample, so that we can kind of talk through how you guys need to read it. What I've done then is I've gone through, and on this sample, I've shown you how each of these numbers that's being reported by RMA correspond to your Chapter 3 handout. So let's just kind of go through this as we go down the line. So I'm saying, okay, at the top, I want you to pick the most recent dates, and they probably actually have 2 RMA books on reserve over there, the most recent one and an older one, because what happens is students procrastinate and a lot of people show up all at once. So I just have them keep at least 2 books in the reserve section. So then what happens is that I want you to get the most recent one, so the one they hand you. And if you look at the top, it's showing you basically a little balance sheet. So it says assets, and it's showing you total assets 100, and then it says liabilities, and then it says total liabilities and net worth 100. So for RMA, net worth is equity. Net worth is equity. So this little balance sheet is showing you in percentages that 100% of your assets are financed with 100% of your liabilities and equity. So on the balance sheet part of this, it's percentages, not ratios. So I'm saying, okay, if you calculate number 9, I'm showing you number 9. Number 9 on your sheet is your debt ratio, which is total debt divided by total assets. This is the only ratio, number 9, where you have to do a calculation using the RMA. So what I'm saying is if you take 100%, so on this, you're looking at 100% on any of them, and I'm saying subtract from that net worth, equity, you have the percentage for debt. So in this case, in this industry, they're saying net worth, and it's hard to read because I've made so many copies of this, is 44.1%. So that means that 55.9% of this industry, on average, would be financed with debt. So 55.9 would be your industry average for number 9, if this was your industry. Does that make sense? This is the hardest one to understand.
Where is that 44 coming from?
Well, you can't read it on this, but it's your net worth. If you can squint, you see 44.1. Yeah, it's in the gray box. Where I have it circled, the 44.1 would have been in that gray box right above the 100. Well, I have the original one. It was 44.1. So you guys are better squinters than I am. Okay, then I'm just showing you as you go down the list. Operating profit is going to coordinate with number 12, which is operating margin. No calculation needed. Then the next one you see is number 11, but that's going to be one of those that you have to restate. And I'm telling you, see, they're saying profit before taxes divided by sales, so that's earning before tax divided by sales. So number 11 is going to be one of those where you do an author for that calculation for the author, net income divided by sales. Then you do a recalculation where you have to have earnings before tax divided by sales to make it comparable. And I'm circling in the column where you find your number, which really doesn't matter until you get to the ratios. In the ratios, the first one you see, number 1, current ratio. And what's happening is you're seeing that they actually give you 3 numbers there. The middle number is the true industry average, and that's the one that I want you to use. So use the true industry average for your project. They're just showing you the top number is what the best companies are doing, the bottom number is what the worst companies are doing. Then And the next one you see is quick ratio. Pretty straightforward, choose the middle one. The next one, number 4 that you see, notice that I'm going to a different little column to circle that number. See, what's happening with number 4 is the industry average, they're doing a turn, they're doing sales divided by receivables. If you look at our number 4, our author is using average receivables then divided by sales. Remember on number 4, what we're saying is that on the chart that I gave you, our author is using credit sales. But remember, I told you that generally accepted accounting principles don't make companies report credit sales. So you'll see what we do for industry averages is we just use sales. So you can't get credit sales, so just use their whole sales number. Okay, just use total sales. But to do the calculation like our author, because that's days instead of a ratio, you have to go to that little column that's kind of all by itself, and that's why I've circled the 47, because it's 47 days for the DSO, for the day sales outstanding. So the 7.7 would be turns. How many times are they turning their receivables over every year? So that makes sense. 47 times 7.7 is about 365, because they're looking at a whole year. So you need to pick the day number. And in Finance 440, you start to do more calculations looking at days, so that little days column would become more important. But for now, we're just going to use that one, because we're not doing number 5 this time. For number 3, we actually are using a turn. Cost of goods sold divided by inventory is exactly what we do, so we go back to the ratio column. So it's only for number 4 that we have to go to that little individual column. Otherwise, we're in the main column. Everything else is pretty straightforward until you get to number 14 and 13, because once again, the author used net income. If you look at number 14 and 13 on this handout that I gave you, looking down towards the bottom, it says percent profit before taxes. So they're not saying you take that percent, they're telling you that the answer in the column for 13 and 14 isn't a ratio, it's a percent. So that's why they have the little percent there. Percent profit, they're not telling you to take the percent profit as the numerator, they're telling you that the answer is a percent. And there underneath 13 and 14, number 6, I'm showing you sales divided by net fixed assets. We already talked about that. That the industry average uses net. So then what you'll be doing is you'll be using your RMA to plug in the industry averages to do your comparisons. So at the end of this project, you should basically have a little chart that looks similar to the Chapter 3, Problem 30. Just make a little chart. It should fit on one page. I'm telling you to, don't spend a lot of time making it beautiful with colors and, don't go get the logos and all that kind of stuff. That's not going to change your grade any. Just a simple, basic chart is what I want out of it. And I prefer it to be all on one page. If you can't get all of the ratios on one page, that's fine. But the information for each ratio should be on one page. So if you have to landscape it, do that. But I don't want to have to hold your paper up and look at this and then have another sheet that I'm trying to line up to know what your comment is. It should be that I can just read it straight across for each ratio. I'm saying you don't have to tell me how they're calculated, so you don't have to tell me that current ratio is current assets divided by current liabilities. You don't need to put the verbiage in, just show me the number. What did you choose for current, what number did you use for current assets? What number did you use for current liabilities? Show me the numbers that you're using for your numerator and denominator. I'm telling you, I don't want the annual reports handed in. I've got my own copies. That just makes 4 more pages times 70-some people that I have to carry across campus. I don't need that. And I'm asking you that if you don't make a copy of your RMA when you're over there, you at least have to tell me the NAICS code that you used. Don't make me guess what industry you thought they were in. So either give me the NAICS code or give me a copy of your RMA. It really helps with partial credit grading if you give me a copy of your RMA, because if you're picking numbers and I can't figure out where you're getting your industry average numbers, if you have a copy of the RMA that you used, then I can see where you're getting that number and I'll give you some partial credit if I can see what's going on. If it's logical what you're doing and it's just a minor mistake, that's different than if you're totally off track. But I can't tell if there's nothing for me to see. So I would recommend you getting a copy of that RMA in advance. I say this is not a group project. I recommend you do your own work. I realize that you guys will talk to each other and get some insights from each other. That's fine, but I'm saying at the end of the day, do your own project. I'm saying it's due March 8th at the beginning of class. And the reason I say at the beginning of class is because I don't want people wandering in all during class handing me their papers. So once I pick up the papers and start the lecture, and so I'll put the papers away, then that's when the 5 points for being late starts to come in. So if you usually have problems with parking that day, if you're going to be gone that day, whatever, hand it in early. Okay? Once I start the lecture on March 8th, that's when the 5 points per day starts happening. Questions or comments so far? I'm going to show you. Go ahead.
So far, 11, 13, and 14, we use EBT as the numerator.
Yes.
For number 6, so we use the next, read that as the numerator.
Okay, so the question was, I have to repeat it because she's signing, so she needs to have the voice. So 11, 13, and 14, you'll do two calculations. First, you'll use net income as the numerator, and then second, you'll use earnings before tax as the numerator, so that's correct. With number 6, what will happen is the author used the plant, property, and equipment at cost. So first you'll use that as the numerator. I think one of the companies doesn't give that to you. I'll have to look back. If they only gave you net fixed assets, then that would have been the only way you can calculate it. Let me look at my financials really quickly. Okay, so for Home Depot, if you're assigned Home Depot, you will have both calculations for number 6. If you're assigned Lowe's, Lowe's doesn't give you the cost of their plant, property, and equipment. They only give you net. So if you have Lowe's, you can only do the net number.
So since we have Home Depot, we have both, be able to compare both the PP and the net fixed income?
Well, here's what's going to happen, because the question was, do you compare both? Well, here's what's going to happen. The author's version, you can't compare to RMA because it's not apples to apples. So you can't compare someone clear down to net income with someone who's using earnings before tax, because that's not a fair comparison. So what will happen is on the authors, for industry average, you won't have one, and for your comment, you won't have one. So you can put NA there if you want. NA, not applicable. Then for the RMA version, you'll have an industry average, and then you'll have your comment. So then same is true up here with number 6, where the author's version, you won't have an industry average, and you won't have a comment. But for the RMA, where you're using the net fixed assets, you will have an industry average, and you will have a comment. Does that make more sense? Any other questions or concerns? Okay, give me just a minute here to get my data sharing going. Now that the computer one of the things that you're gonna have to do is you're gonna have to know the NAICS code for your company. So if you look at the top of my sample RMA that I gave you, you're gonna see that it's saying manufacturing, telephone apparatus, and then it's saying NAICS 334210. So in that book for RMA, when you start thumbing through it, it's all organized by NAICS code. So you're gonna have to go, it's numeric by what those codes are. So if you don't know your code, you're gonna be over there a really long time looking for your industry. So if you go to your MyWSU, and I've pulled up mine, and it looks a little different today than it used to. I don't know what's going on. But anyway, you guys will have a library tab. And so what I've done is I've clicked on the libraries tab. So your MyWSU, your libraries tab. And then under this library resources, the box that says library resources, you're going to see it says electronic databases. If you'll click on that electronic databases, and there's a lot of ways that you can do a search. And I just typed in Mergent because that's what we want, MERGENT. And if you look, it pulls up Mergent online. And it has this little lock there. I don't know why, but sometimes when I'm off campus, which doesn't make sense, it'll ask me for my ID and everything again. Usually when I'm on campus, it doesn't. It's just saying that your student fees are paying for you to get to this. So once you're no longer a student, you won't be able to get to this because it's going to have to recognize you. Okay, so if you want Mergent, click on Mergent Online. And then the cursor brings you automatically where you need to be, and it says, okay, company search. And you can search by company name. And I'm not going to put in your company because that would be too easy. And I can't type today at all. So let's pretend like I put in Starbucks. So as I start typing, it starts pulling up companies that I might consider. So Starbucks, and it shows you that the ticker is SBUX, so that's the one I would want to look at. So if I had assigned you Starbucks, you would have typed in that, and it would have pulled up what you're seeing now. So it pulls up a lot of information for that company. What I want you to pull off of that is look in this blue shaded box in the top middle. It's saying, it tells you the sector. So Starbucks is in the hotel, restaurant, and travel sector. They're telling you the industry of eating places with the SIC code, but then they tell you the industry of limited services restaurants with the NAICS code of 722211. So if I had given you Starbucks, what you would need to know is that their NAICS code was 722211. So are you seeing how to find that? It's in that middle blue shaded area. And this is all we're using Mergent for. We're not using it for the financial statements. We're not using it for anything else. We're just using it for the NAICS code. Another thing that I usually do, though, is I'll write down some of the words, like I'll write limited service restaurants, and I'll write eating places, because here's what's going to happen. It could be that you go over to the library, and maybe RMA doesn't have industry averages for 722211. Maybe they have 72210 and 72213, but maybe there isn't an exact industry average for 72211. So then what I can do is, knowing what I'm reading or knowing what the classification is, I can read the ones that are close to it and pick the one that is going to fit it best. Because what happens is they can't calculate industry averages for every single NAICS code. So they just do some of the larger ones, some of the larger groupings. So if you get over there and your exact NAICS code isn't there, look at the ones before and after it and try to get a feel for which one you think is gonna fit best. Questions or comments on that? And I know this seems really straightforward, and I know it seems like something that maybe you could put off until March 7th at midnight to work on, but I wouldn't recommend that. I would recommend that you get started on it, start seeing what's going on, get the financial statements pulled, because what you're gonna see with this is that what we present academically isn't always verbatim what you're gonna see in practice. So there will be some times when you guys have some questions for me. So what I'll try to do is, in class, we'll have time, because we usually have a little time after class, where if you are stuck on something with the written assignment from now until March 8th, when we have to hand them in, I'll answer questions that you guys have. And I'll probably even ask you if you have any questions. So use the time wisely and get started so that if you get stuck, it's not midnight and nobody's there to help you. Questions or comments? Shutting off the recorder, let me start again then. What I'd like to do then today with the rest of the day is use it in case you guys have any questions for the exam. Remember the exam is Tuesday? I gave you the breakdown of the exam on Tuesday when we met. So now you've had some time to kind of think about it. Is there anything you guys wanted to review?
So essentially, that's all we should have.
Okay, so the question was, is that all you guys need to know is the breakdown, study that? If you notice on the breakdown, I'm saying that all reading that I've assigned, all lecture notes, and all homework is fair game for the exam. So yeah, that's giving you a skeleton of kind of how to expect it to be laid out, but just know that anything that I've presented is going to be fair game. So what you're going to see is, like I said, the chapter 6 calculations will be in the multiple choice. And then other than that, I'm kind of directing you with the problems on how you need to study. So hopefully that helps. And then remember, if you look out there on Blackboard, you'll be able to see that sheet that I'm going to give you. So I'll hand that out to you with the chapter 3 ratios, the chapter 2 equation for free cash flow, and the chapter 6 equation with the quoted interest rate and of the expectations theory. So you'll be given those equations. You'll need to have a calculator, don't rely on me. It can't be programmable, you can't use the one on your phone. Try to be on time. Questions, comments? If you don't have any questions as a class, then I'll go ahead and let you guys have a little bit of time then today for working on your written assignment and or studying for the exam. I'll hang out in here as long as you guys do. If you guys all leave, I'll go to my office, so if then you want to see me, I'll be there until about 12 or 12:30 today. And if you want to give me individual questions, I'll be available.